anxiety or attachment to the parents. And if he says he has, then you tell him to let go, because you're going to die anyway. You have to let go. So after he says he has let go, then you ask him to let go the wife and children, the direct family. Then after that, human sensual pleasures. And then after that, the heavens, one by one, until the Brahma heavens. And then after that, you advise him that even the Brahma world is impermanent, unstable, and to direct his mind to cessation of identity. That means to get rid of identity view, not to identify the self with the body and the mind. And if he's a wise Buddhist who has understood the Dhamma, perhaps he can do this and become liberated. But this type of advice you can only give somebody who has practiced the Dhamma for a long time. Otherwise he won't be able to follow. A lot of people, when they are on their deathbed, they're so panicky and their mind is so disturbed. You cannot talk to them like that. They'll be seeing visions and frightened and all that. That's why I always say it takes many years to prepare for death. So that's the last sutta that I am going to read on this this chapter on the Sotapatti Samyutta. Now we come to the last chapter, 56th chapter, called the Sacca Samyutta. Sacca means the truths, meaning like the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha. So this chapter is about the Four Noble Truths, basically. The first sutta is 56.1. At Savatthi, the Buddha said, monks, develop concentration, samadhi. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. I stop here for a moment. I see the Buddha in several suttas always says this, that you need to have a very concentrated mind to understand things as they really are, to see things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the origin of suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In other words, he understands the Four Noble Truths. Monks, develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the origin of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cessation of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says we should make an effort, we should make a strong effort to understand the Four Noble Truths. But if you have concentration, with a clear mind, it's much easier to understand. The next sutta, 56.2, the Buddha said, monks, make an exertion in seclusion. A monk who is secluded understands things as they really are. Stop here for a moment. You see, these two seem to come together quite often. Concentration and seclusion. The Buddha always encouraged these two things. Seclusion means being aloof from society, aloof from others. If you want to practice the holy path and make spiritual progress, you have no other choice. You have to cut yourself away from society. You have to give up your business, give up your attachments, and give up all the happy life, the night life, and all that. And because without all these sacrifices, your mind cannot calm down. If we are all attached to all the things of the world, you cannot calm down. Which reminds me, the other day we read one sutta. The Buddha said that without tranquility, that person suffers. A lot of us in this world, we are so busy with this, with that, all the worldly worries, that the mind cannot calm down. If your mind cannot calm down, there's a lot of suffering inside. mental suffering. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is, this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Monks make an exertion in seclusion. A monk who is secluded understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. That's the end of the sutta. So these two, concentration and seclusion, are very important in the holy path. 56.3, Buddha said, monks, whatever clansmen in the past rightly went forth from the household life into homelessness, all did so in order to make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths as they really are. Whatever clansmen in the future will rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness, all will do so in order to make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths as they really are. Whatever clansmen at present have rightly gone forth from the household life into homelessness, all have done so in order to make the breakthrough to the Noble Truths as they really are. What for? The Noble Truth of suffering, the Noble Truth of the origin of suffering, the Noble Truth of the cessation of suffering, the Noble Truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Whatever clansmen rightly went forth, will rightly go forth, have rightly gone forth from the household life into homelessness, all have done so in order to make the breakthrough to these Four Noble Truths as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So the objective in going forth, in other words, to practice the holy path, is to walk the holy path, is to understand the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the most important Dhamma in the Buddha's teachings, because if you understand the Four Noble Truths fully, you will be liberated fully. If you understand the Four Noble Truths partially, you will be liberated partially. You'll become an Arya. 56.7. Monks, do not think evil, unwholesome thoughts, that is, sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. For what reason? These thoughts, monks, are unbeneficial, irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and do not lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. When you think, monks, you should think, this is suffering. You should think, this is the origin of suffering. You should think, this is the cessation of suffering. You should think, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. For what reason? These thoughts, monks, are beneficial, relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Ordinary worldlings, ordinary people, their thoughts have these three ingredients: sensual thoughts, ill will or thoughts of anger, and thoughts of harming others. But one who practices the spiritual path, he should instead direct his thinking to the thoughts of the Four Noble Truths, thoughts of the Dhamma. Thoughts of the Dhamma are lofty thoughts, higher thoughts. These ordinary unwholesome thoughts are base thoughts. Low thoughts will bring you to a low rebirth. high thoughts will bring you to a high rebirth. 56.10, the Buddha said, monks, do not engage in the various kinds of pointless talk. That is, talk about kings, thieves, and ministers of state. Talk about armies, dangers and wars. Talk about food, drink, garments and beds. Talk about garlands and scents. Talk about relations, vehicles, villages, towns, cities and countries. Talk about women and talk about heroes. Street talk and talk by the well, talk beside the well. Talk about those departed in days gone by. Last time they talked by the well, nowadays they talk in the kopitiam. Rambling chit-chat, speculation about the world and about the sea. Talk about becoming this or that. For what reason? Because monks, this talk is unbeneficial, irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and does not lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. When you talk, monks, you should talk about this is suffering. You should talk about this is the origin of suffering. You should talk about this is the cessation of suffering. You should talk about this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. For what reason? Because monks, this talk is beneficial, relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and leads to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This first part, the description of the various types of what here is called pointless talk. Sometimes you can call it idle gossip. The Pali word is tirachana kata, which literally translates as animal talk. What do we see in Cantonese? Gong sam, gong si. So this base talk, wasting time talk. So it's called animal talk because it's low talk, base talk. So then the Buddha said I should talk Dhamma. In some other suttas, sometimes the Buddha comes across his monk disciples and he finds them chatting. He asks them, what are you talking about? And then when they say they talk about some worldly topic, then the Buddha said, when you come together, only two things you should do. One is either you keep the Aryan silence, shut up, don't talk. Or if you talk, talk about Dhamma. Okay, the next sutta is important sutta. It's the first sutta that the Buddha spoke in the world. It's called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Setting in motion the wheel of the Dhamma. Dhammacakka is Dhamma wheel. Pavattana must be setting in motion or turning the Dhamma wheel, Sutta. Thus have I heard. This is the sutta. After the Buddha was enlightened, he contemplated at first he didn't want to teach the Dhamma. He decided that all people in the world are not interested in the Dhamma. And even if you teach them, they're not interested to practice. Most people are like that. And then this Brahma Sahampati came to plead with the Buddha. This Brahma Sahampati, in one of the suttas, he mentioned that he was a monk under the previous Buddha, Kassapa. He was a monk under the previous Buddha Kassapa, and passing away from there, he was reborn as Brahma Sahampati. So he had, because of his, I guess his psychic power, probably he had seen a lot of holy men. So when he saw the Buddha, he knew that this was a fully enlightened Arahant. So he pleaded with the Buddha to teach. He said, otherwise, there are a lot of people in the world, they have what we call Shinkan, good roots, good blessings from the past life, and if you don't teach them, they cannot progress. So because he pleaded with the Buddha 3 times, then the Buddha contemplated again. The Buddha found there are some people who are interested in the Dhamma. So the Buddha decided to teach. Now after the Buddha decided to teach, he looked around, whom should he teach? The first